and Techi Jan Eninkomo, or a finance expert, any thoughts on these issues are highlighted and open. Christian, it's good to have you on the show this morning.
Nice having you this morning.
I'm hoping you're doing well.
By the grace, all is going well.
So, Christian, at a time when negotiations are commencing between Ghana and the IMF, and we get to hear that FITCH has again downgraded us from CCC to CC, what does this do to any proposals we may be taking to the IMF for, a look at?
All right. Thank you very much once again for having me on your program. Let me give a very quick background to what some of these rating agencies do. There are some investors who probably haven't even stepped foot in Ghana before, but they need to invest in the Ghanaian economy, so they don't really know what is happening. So normally they will depend on some of these rating agencies per the data available to them. They make their projections, and then they use that information to make informed decisions whether to invest in the Ghanaian economy or not. So there are a number of them, of which FITCH is one of the star ones. Ghana used to be in the B bracket, and then we were relegated to the C bracket, and then recently the triple C turned to double C. And what that means is that at first you were high risk, and then there was substantial credit risk that was embedded, and now you have very high levels of credit risk. So for external investors, that is the bonds that the government of Ghana, once it hits the international market, it speaks to them that we could default in our repayment once the government obligations actually fall due. So it's not a very good thing for us. We are just about 2 steps away from a default. And so from the CC, the likelihood that you move to a near default, which is the C, is very high. Then from there, it's just a free fall to a default. We don't expect Ghana to default anyway because of the program that IMF wants to have some sort of arrangement with us. And talking about the IMF, I'm sure they are very much aware, because they've been working with some of these agencies and institutions, so they are very much aware of the position of Ghana. As we speak, debt to GDP ratio is about 81%, which doesn't look good at all. If you look at projections that are being made, it is estimated that somewhere around by 2023, that is by next year, we should be servicing. Before that one, the very first 5 months of this year, government had actually spent close to 18 billion in servicing facilities alone. That is amortization of principal and interest, and that is quite outrageous. And if you look at the international market, that government can no longer hit there because of these ratings, that doesn't look good for government. Government resorts to borrowing, like locally. And so that is why we happen to find our treasury bills that are going very high. At the moment, the 91 day is about 30%, and that is very, very, very high. So though we are not getting access to the international market, but government is hiking these rates to be able to attract a lot of investment from the locals. But you have to ask yourself, is government prepared to increase mobilization, where once these local borrowings fall due, government will be able to meet its obligations? There's a question that we need to ask ourselves. So, and then I know Ghana faces around 3 billion of external debt servicing come next year, including amortization and its interest. So it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good at all.
Now,
Now,
the point you made about treasury bills, I noticed a piece yesterday when I was reading, where there's a report by my journal line. It suggests that government missed its T-bills target for the first time in 15 weeks. Now, what does this indicate? That people who purchase these bills are now skeptical of the government's ability to meet their, responsibilities towards them?
It's a number of factors. If you do portfolio management, though the government treasury bills are considered more or less risk-free, but any proper portfolio manager will tell you you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So though it is considered risk-free, they might want to look at other sectors of investment. I mean, if you take the financial sector, for example, their assets could be sometimes a way of other investments. So instead of pushing everything to the T-bills, why don't we give some of these monies out in lending so that at least you'll be seen to have diversified your portfolio a bit. So portfolio diversification is a part of it. And of course, I've had some institutions call me to lament about especially that particular story that you were referring to and what the outlook is for the future. And so definitely people are going to be dragging their feet purchasing some of these government bonds and treasuries. So it's a number of factors. But all in all, we expect that before the year will end, there will be some hope so that we'll be able to know what the economy stands for us as far as Kenyans are concerned.
Now, on the world stage, we heard His Excellency the President raise concerns about the imbalance in terms of, access to funds and how these credit rating agencies over a period seems to be not favoring the African continent. And I remember sometime back the Ministry of Finance protested a downgrade which had been given the Ghanaian economy. Now, would you say that these rating agencies, the data they use in these analyses are firm enough to warrant the kind of downgrades or upgrades that we've been receiving over the years?
For me, it's a chicken and egg syndrome. I mean, we've had periods where these same rating agencies were giving us very high ratings and we're very happy and we're taking them and we're taking all the plaudits for it. So if it's now downgrading us based on the same data that they use in upgrading us and we're happy, if they are applying the same rule and they are downgrading us, I don't think there should be any qualms. Truth be told, if you look at what has been done over the period, it's a rule for all of us. Unfortunately, Ghana is a part of the global world. Ghana is a part of the global economy. So we do not expect that there are going to be a rule different from what all other countries are used to measure. Africa as a whole, we've had our challenges. And we need to confront them. But as far as I'm concerned, the rules remain the same. The field remains a level playing field for all of us. So we need to get up our game to be able to meet what the standards are. There cannot be standards for Africa, and there cannot be standards for the rest of the world. We all happen to be a part of the global economy. And what affects us affects everyone else. So the rule is the rule. We just have to play by it.
Now, there's a very thorny one, which has to do with whether government, in going to this IMF conversation, should look at its local indebtedness to banks in the country. Yesterday, there was a story that was reported that the insolvency possibilities for banks in this country is very high as a result of their exposure to government products, T-bills and whatsoever. Now, should government look at its internal institutions, or it should look at its external, debts in terms of its debt restructuring?
For debt restructuring, it's a very complex terrain. Once someone has actually bought into a particular investment product, what you can do, especially with a short-term one, is very limited. There isn't that much that you can do. That is the 91-day, 182, and probably the 1-year treasury bills. What you can probably negotiate on is the long-term bonds, the 2 years, the 5 years, and those ones. And fortunately for us, on the local platform, it is the short-term ones that are quite dominant. I know the cocoa bonds, the cocoa bills, some of them are about 2, 3, 5 years. That's one, because the earnings are not to be realized soon, yes, government can have an avenue of a restructure of a sort. So that one, the avenue is available, but on the short-term ones, I doubt if anything could actually be done about it, because it's going to bring a lot of chaos. If, for example, you say you are going to renegotiate on a 182-day bill, I can't fathom that. I don't see it happening. But a long-term investment and those products are the ones that, if government will want to do a restructure, that is what is available to be touched.
Now, let's quickly turn our attention to the IMF discussions with Ghana. From where you said, what would Ghana be taking to the table, seeing that government's hopes of having the e-levy, pulling a lot of revenue, has not been the case? What would government be taking to the table?
I think it is one thing that needs to be firmed up. Over the period, Ghana has been to the IMF a number of times. And in all of these things, one thing that remains an underlying factor is ways to actually improve upon revenue generation. And with revenue generation, it is two things. Number one, it's either you cut down on expenses to make more money, or you put in certain strategies that can actually rake in a lot of money for you. In our situation, we have both cases having a defect in them. Number one, government expenses and expenditure is quite huge. If you look at how much we spend on our government appointees, how much wastages go in, and if you look at the Auditor General's report and how much excesses and wastage that are lost through a lot of infractions, then it becomes quite mind-blowing. So government has got a task to achieve. Number one, reduce the expenditure, government expenditure. We can make so much savings. I'm aware government and their people have cut down certain allowances, but you ask yourself, is it enough? Do government appointees still fly business, or they fly economy? It's a conversation that we can have. I know of the troubles that a lot of some of these government appointees make. Are we ready to have a renegotiation of a sort where we say, okay, so government can only provide for, let's say, economy. If you need to fly business, then maybe you can add your own money to it to do your business class. Are we ready to have that conversation? So there are lots more areas that government can look at in trying to cut down on expenditure. Then we move to the other side, that is the income generation. What are the strategies being put in place by governments to increase income in the country? The reforms at GRA, are we going to see the results now? What is going to be the impact? I'm aware of the number of proposals that have been put in place, a number of strategies that have been churned out, especially by the GRA. Are we ready to have a conversation where probably we'll have an increased tax regime? Are we ready to have that conversation as a country? The bigger institutions that pay higher taxes, can we look at probably inching it up a bit? I mean, to make more money. There is also that incident where foreign countries, that is capital flights coming in the form of investment. Once businesses are opened, and then it takes them about 5 years for them to enjoy a tax rebate. That 5-year period, we've had history in this country where very big institutions, very big corporate companies come in just about when they are about starting to pay tax. That is 4th year, gearing into the 5th year, then the shares are sold to another company to come in, and they also begin afresh from another year one, just when they are about starting to pay tax. Then again, it will metamorphose. So it's difficult. Yes, we need to attract foreign investment into the country where people will be employed and all of that. But where do we draw the line between, efficient management of your tax regime against trying to help businesses or attract foreign investment into the country? How about we talk about probably giving them just about a year of the tax rebate? are we ready to have that conversation? So there are so many things that I believe government can do, but do we have the political will or the political power to do that as of now? You see, our challenge as a country, and I would say Africa as a whole, is about the next election. It's always about the next election. So I'm not sure if the government has got the balls to take some of these pragmatic measures that are actually going to put us on the right path of development.
Now, the final question has to do with whether IMF would do anything at all, their presence. Because the argument that some economists make is that, let's say we get this 3 billion from the IMF. The IMF money is going to go into debt restructuring and payments and financial obligations of the government to bonds and loans we have taken and all of that. At the end of the day, if the government's drive at generating revenue is not pushed up, we would have a situation where, yes, our debt would have been settled, and yet there will be no money for any developmental project. And so growth would still not be experienced.
Yes, arguably, I do get your perspective, but like I did indicate earlier, it's not just about generating more funds. How about cutting down on expenses? Whereas you'll be able to make so much savings from that side. So government needs to show commitment to this whole IMF intervention, where we can cut down on our expenses or expenditure. I'm sure that alone, if we let's just try to see if we can recoup about 50% of what the Auditor General says we have lost to infractions here and there. Are we ready to do that? I'm sure if that one alone comes in, we should be fine. How much are we looking to get from the IMF? 6 billion, I understand. I mean, from the preliminary engagement. But look at how much we have lost according to the Auditor General's report to certain infractions. That is more than 20 billion. So assuming we are even able to do just half, there wouldn't be the need for IMF even coming to our aid. For me, where we are and the resources that are available to us, we should be able to do these things without any external interventions. Locally, we can mobilize, or once we hit the international market, there should be self-financing projects that can actually give us profits where we can even repay the loans and its interest, and then also make some money out of it. So once we're able to do some of these things where we cut down our expenses or chase after money that have ended up at the wrong sectors or with the wrong people, yes, we should be fine to move on as a nation and wouldn't really need any foreign